Well, it's rather something like the longest day. We started this off on the night of
Major Patrick Chukwuma Kaduna Nzeogwu, hero of Villian. Major Patrick Chukwuma Kaduna Nzeogwu was born in Kaduna on February 26, 1937, to his Igbo parents from Okpanam in the present-day Delta State. His parents gave him the Igbo name of Sir Chukwuma, meaning only God knows, which was shortened to Chukwuma. However, their Hausa neighbors claimed him as one of them and named him Dan Kaduna, meaning son of Kaduna. Although being baited into a Catholic home and even given the baptismal name Patrick, he grew up becoming conscious of colonial Nigeria. He then began to de-emphasize it and eventually dropped it in preference to his given Igbo and Hausa names. Chukwuma obviously took after his both parents. In this regard, he was bold, courageous and stubborn as his mother. On the other hand, he was focused, straightforward and strict as his father. Growing up in Kaduna among Hausa people in the 40s and 50s made Chukwuma more or less a nominal Igbo man. He was more Hausa than Igbo. His Hausa name, Dan Kaduna, said it all. He was even more fluent in Hausa than Igbo language. Beyond the genetic traits he acquired from both parents, his worldview was shaped and conditioned by his immediate environment. He had many friends who were not Nas. That explains why he was at home any day with army troops from the north. Chukwuma's years at St. John's College challenged his self-consciousness. His determination to challenge injustice and racial arrogance was reinforced by his exposure during the military training in Britain. By the time he returned to Nigeria after completion of his military training, he had an irrevocable commitment to tackle injustice and racism by whatever means at his disposal. Chukwuma shot into national limelight in the early hours of January 15, 1966, when him and his troops stormed the official residence of the then Premier of the Northern and Southern of Sokoto, Sir Ahmadu Bello, eventually killing him in the process. When Chukwuma and his troops struck, there was widespread of rejoicing across the land.
Of the night of the coup in Kaduna.
Well, it's rather something like the longest day. We started this off on the night of the 13th of January when a night exercise was planned by the military college, which I command. We took our troops to the ground and taught them how to do night attacks.
The clumsy leadership of the politicians of that era were too glaring. Barely a few years into nominal political independence, there came abject political intolerance in the country that claimed its first major victim, which included the visionary chief Obafemi Awolowo, and a good number of his political associates were given long prison sentences. Also, the malicious national census of the 1962 had caused predictable problems. Before the coup of January 15, 1966, Chukwuma was the commander of the Nigerian Military Training College, based in Kaduna. He had joined the Nigerian Army in 1957 at the age of 20, after 5 years of secondary education at St. John's College, Kaduna, where he left a solid record despite the brushes he had with the school authorities over the application of justice. It is perhaps pertinent to note here that he was expelled from the school in his final year because he had led a rebellion against the school authorities. Convinced that his action was right, Chukwuma vehemently refused to apologize so that he could be pardoned and recalled by the school authorities. Instead, he chose to write the Cambridge School Certificate examination as an external candidate. Notwithstanding, he still came out in flying colors. Chukwuma served briefly in the Nigerian contingent that was sent to keep peace among the warring factions in the Congo between November 1960 and April 1961. This outing convinced him that Europeans were no friends of Africans. In every city where the Nigerian troops served, Chukwuma saw firsthand how Europeans subjected Africans to subhuman conditions. Before Chukwuma left for India in 1964 for further military training, he was already disillusioned with the quality of political leadership in Nigeria after independence. Things did not get better while he was away. Instead, they got worse. He wrote off the political leaders as a bunch of self-seeking buccaneers who would stop at nothing in order to remain in power. He detested their exploitation of tribal feelings in order to remain relevant. Therefore, at this point in time, Chukwuma's attention was focused on both national and Pan-African problems. He seemed to have attached more importance to the transnational problems of racism in Southern Africa than the national problems. Accordingly, he made up his mind to go after the latter first, before the former. But by a strange quirk of fate, he was forced to change plans. He decided to address the national problems before the large racial problems in Southern Africa. Critics had it that Chukwuma was not among those who conceived the idea of coup d'etat in Nigeria. All the same, it appealed to him because he thought that it would provide him a platform to halt the national drift and to chart a new course for the country. Chukwuma did not discriminate between politicians and soldiers. Every hand that had been soiled and had contributed to their national malaise was to be cut off. On 30th May 1967, Biafra declared its independence from Nigeria. This was spurred by the incessant killing of Nigerians in northern Nigeria and the refusal of then military head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, to mobilize security personnel to stop the killings. On 29 July 1967, Nzeogwu, who had been promoted to the rank of a Biafran lieutenant colonel, was trapped in an ambush near Nsukka while conducting a night reconnaissance operation against federal troops of the 21st Battalion under Captain Mohammed Inuwa Wushishi. He was killed in action and his corpse was subsequently identified. However, his sister insisted he killed himself to avoid being humiliated by the federal troops. After the defeat of Biafra, orders were given by the Nigerian military head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, for him to be buried at the military cemetery in Kaduna with full military honors.